Good evening, everyone. It's Greg from Tree Wood Turning. Again, we're back here at the wonderful Northampton Community College Fab Lab. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. Well, not a little bit different. We'll still be doing some bolt turning. But before we start, I want to talk very, very quickly about something that's highly important when you're working with this stuff, and that is safety. The other night I was here and I didn't show a video of this. It was not a productive night. Like I said online, it was more of a learning experience than anything, and there's a reason for that. First off, the lathe that I usually use here, it was not behaving. It was not behaving the way that it should be. It's having some power issues, so we're not going to be using this one tonight. We're going to be using a mini lathe, and we're going to be doing this, a mid-sized bowl, but it's still going to be a nice, powerful lathe, and we're going to get some good quality out of it. But while I was turning the other night, I was using a parting tool. I was using this, what is it here? This diamond-shaped tool right here, okay? And I lost a little bit of control. It got underneath the piece of spinning wood, and it pulled the tool out from under. And whenever you drop a tool, you just let it fall. You don't try to catch it because you might grab it by the sharp end and you don't want anything to do with that. It did nick me on the way down. Thankfully, it was, just a minor flesh wound. As the Black Knight says, just a flesh wound. And, thankfully I had my face shield on. Always have your face shield on. Always wear a dust mask. And I might end up wearing gloves in the future. I don't know. Gloves could be a little tricky because you don't want anything loose fitting, but they do make tight fitting fingerless gloves, so you can still get the feel for the tools, but still protect, the palm of your hand and your, the side of your hand and everything like that. So I'm going to get things set up and we'll get rolling tonight. All right. Stay tuned. So what we have here is a piece of oak. This is going to be my first attempt at doing a live edge wood turning. And I'm working off of a Raleigh MIDI lathe. It's a bit smaller than the one that I'm used to, but like I said before, the one that I usually work on is malfunctioning a bit. It's got some power issues, but the school is looking to replace them at some point. This is a lathe with, I believe, a 6-inch swing, which means the distance between the bed of the lathe and the center, or the headstock, is actually, no, this may be a 12-inch swing, rather, because the radius between the headstock and the bed is about 6 inches. So roughly 12 inches is the largest size bowl that you could make on a lathe like this. We're starting out with, just roughing it out. I already started roughing out. I already started roughing this a bit, so you can see it has some roundness to it, but there's still quite a few flat points to it, so this needs to be reduced quite a bit yet. Now this sped up, obviously. Lathe turning does not go this fast. And when you have a large piece that's out of balance like this, you need to start at a lower speed. And some people like to work with an RPM readout. This lathe does technically have an RPM readout, but it's not. I don't really rely on it too much. I've heard from other people, and I agree, and this is part of my style now. It's just more important to get a feel for it. Some pieces of wood are harder than others, and depending on what you're working on, you may need to get a feel for varying your speed. And as a piece gets more and more into round and more balanced, you can gradually turn the speed up. I'm stopping every so often to check the shape. I stick to primarily the same bowl gouge I use every time here. I'll be honest, I'm not sure the measurement of the bowl gouge. And you can see here we're in a completely round shape here. And look at that grain. That grain looks just absolutely gorgeous. And this is a part that I don't normally show you, but it's a very, very important part of the process. It's learning how to sharpen your tools. And I'm putting this, lining this up with the grinder. You have to make sure that that grinder is seated, so that when you pivot, you're riding that bevel with the grinder. And if you've ever gone from using a dull blade to a sharp blade, you really feel the difference with a properly sharpened blade. You go back and forth a few times with along the bevel here. The jig that the tool is sitting in allows me to pivot the bowl gouge so I can get that nice swept back type of profile to it. See, it's a little bit blurry here, but that's a nice sharp edge right now. Now we're gonna do a face cut. I'm gonna drop the tool rest a little bit so that when I bring my bowl gouge up to the center, it's as properly aligned with the center as possible. And we're going to do a face cut here because we're going to clean up that face and we're going to get ready to establish the tenon and the shoulder for this piece. See how clean that is. And a little bit more with it. I slowed the video down to more the proper speed at this point, so this is really how fast everything is going. Now remember, when you're doing a face cut like this, or anytime you're doing a cut like this, the closer you get to the center, the slower you need to move your gouge, because the outside is spinning faster than the inside is, and you want the speed of your bowl gouge to be aligned with the speed of the lathe, or else you're going to get skipping. You're going to get nasty tool marks and problems. And I start off, you can't see it here at this angle unfortunately, but I start off with a closed bowl gouge at the edge, which means that the cutout flute is pointing towards the center of the bowl. And as I move in, I rotate it so that the open flute of the bowl gouge is pointed more or less at a 45 degree angle upwards. And then you close the flute of the bowl gouge again as you approach the center. Now here I am getting a rough idea of the opening of my 4-jaw chuck so I can establish a proper size for the tenon. Sorry, my gigantic elbow is in the way. I do correct that momentarily here. Unfortunately, this is a teaching lab, so really isn't meant for doing videos like this. They've been the community college has been very, very patient with me being able to do this because they don't mind the promotion. They like the promotion. It's a great lab. And like I keep saying, if you have a community college near you that has any setup like this, it's really, really nice. So I've established the width of my tenons, and now I'm going to make my face cut in towards that marking. And speed it up a little bit because this could get boring. It's very meditative to do this though, because you can only focus on what you're doing. Like I've said before, you really can't listen to anything else while you're doing this because you need to listen to how the tool is vibrating. You need to listen for any catches that you're getting. You get a lot of information from what you hear. Now I've established the tenon. I'm now establishing the shoulder, which gives us some room to play when we're shaping the bowl. And I'm using the fingernail gouge to just get a really fine sharp corner on that tenon up from the shoulder, so that when we put on the four-jaw chuck, there is a nice sharp 90-degree angle for that chuck to land on. Now we're shaping the bottom of the bowl while we're in this orientation, because once we have the four-jaw chuck on, shaping the bottom of the bowl is going to be it would be very difficult. I've made that mistake before, and it's one that I'm not looking to make again, because that four-jaw chuck is pretty thick, and you won't have much room to maneuver once that chuck is on there to get the bottom of the bowl shaped the way that you want it. Now I'm coming at the top of the bowl from the bark down, because if you come at it the other way, you run the risk of ripping the bark off, and in a live edge bowl like this, it's not something I want to do. I want to try to maintain as much of that bark as possible. You will see in the final piece, so there is a little bit that is missing, but again, live edge bowls are really, really nice. Now we're doing a shear cut, a shear scraping cut here, to get rid of some of those tool marks, take off a little bit of extra material, kind of smooth out the surface a bit. And this is the first hardwood bowl that I've ever tried, and it came out really. It was a really nice experience. I thought I was going to have a much rougher time with it than I did. I got really lucky with this one, and I was learning a little bit about what makes a hardwood bowl hardwood. A hardwood as opposed to softwood. If you have wood like pine or any type of fir trees, they're generally considered softwood. And generally any trees that don't lose its leaves, or its needles rather, during the winter, that's one trait of a softwood. And usually they grow faster, and as a result, they are less dense. A hardwood, on the other hand, like oak or maple, they have broader leaves, they lose them in the fall, and they grow slower, and as a result, they are denser woods. You can see that grain is really, really dense there, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Now we have it mounted to the four-jaw chuck, and I'm going. Don't worry, I move the camera out of the way momentarily. But you can see that we have it mounted on the four-jaw chuck, and we have, yeah, see, I told you I'd move it. We're going to be making our cuts along. We got to get rid of some of that interior bark, but I'm not taking it away from the edge. I'm starting my cut inside a bit and bringing it in so we can remove that bark from the center. Now when you do this, unfortunately I don't have a setup where I could show you the top angle yet. I'm hoping to evolve my channel at some point to include that, because there are a lot of other wood turning channels out there that are able to show you multiple angles because they have multiple camera setups. But when you do a cut like this, when you're doing the interior, you want to look from the top down to make sure that you are following the edge of the outside of the bowl. And you want your wall thickness to be pretty consistent throughout until you get towards the bottom of the bowl. And I'm keeping the inside a little bit thicker because as you lose material on the edges can flex, and having a mass in the center helps prevent the walls from flexing too much, in the area that you're cutting. So you want to do this section by section. I've said that before. You want to do this little by little, get each section pretty much just right before you cut further in and continue along. See, I'm trying to have the bevel follow the outside of the bowl. And again, this is sped up quite a bit, so now they have an air compressor here, so I'm using the air compressor to get rid of some of those shavings. And then I'm using the tips of my index finger and my thumb to get a good gauge of the thickness of the walls. Again, trust the feel of it. You get a feel for this, and you can feel where some of the high points are on those the wall thicknesses there as you go along with this. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get a feel for stuff like that. They do have gauges and tools that you can use to measure this stuff, but if you can get a feel for it, like this, like I said, the same with the RPM readouts. There are people that live by those RPM readouts, and there are people that just get a feel for it. And if you're working consistently with the same size bowls and the same type of wood, maybe you can get a good read. You can consistently rely on those RPM readouts. And I don't know, for those of you who've been following this channel, I wanted to give another shout out to a new friend to the channel, Rick Turns. Rick Turns is a great channel to follow. Rick does this feature every week called Last Week in Wood Turning, and I've had the honor of being mentioned on his channel. He does a search for wood turners every week, and looks up new and up and coming channels and gives them a shout out to hopefully give them a little bit of a boost, and it's very encouraging. So if you don't already follow him, I suggest that you do. Another channel that I watch is turnerwoodbowl.com, or turnerwoodbowl, and he has a website, turnerwoodbowl.com, Kent Weekly. He's great. He has a whole series just devoted to teaching wood turning. There are a ton of great wood turning videos out there. So I'm just feeling for some high spots. There was a high spot there I believe that I just felt. And it's good to, if you feel any high spots, it's good to try to go after them before you get too far down, because like I said, those walls might start to flex. And I'm starting, yep, I felt it. Now I'm trying to do some gentle cuts just to get that high spot evened out. And every once in a while you see that I'm adjusting the tool rest there, because you don't want that tool rest getting too far. You don't want too much of a distance between the tool rest and the tip of the bowl gouge. because you're going to be getting a lot of vibration in the tool, and that's not good. What you just saw me do there a second ago when I stopped the bowl is that I measured, and this is something that my teacher had showed me. I measured uh, how deep I want this bowl to be. I took my bowl gouge and I put it on the top of the bowl, but I only let the tip of the bowl gouge go as far as uh, the depth that I want the final bowl to be. And I put my finger at the in line with the edge of the top of the bowl, and then I move the bowl gouge down to see how much further I had left to go. And I'll do that a few times. See, there we go again. So I have a little bit more room to cut a little bit deeper. Getting that little nub out of the center there. And again, as you move towards the center, you want to slow that bowl gouge down as you approach the center, or else you're going to end up going over. Remember that lathe is spinning, so right now on the side that I'm cutting, that wood is coming down, that grain is all coming down, but on the other side of that center, it's all pulling up. So if I go over that center too much, then that tool is going to kick up at me, and I might lose control of it. You don't want that to happen. Now I'm moving that tool rest again because I'm cutting a little bit more off the side, and I need that tool rest to be as close to the tip of that bowl gouge. And you don't want it too close, but you want it pretty close so that you're not getting too much vibration in the tool. And I may have to move it down a little bit too. I think I move it down a little bit at some point because the angle that I'm holding the bowl gouge, it needs to be a little bit more in line with the center of the piece. That wall thickness is coming out pretty nice. It's not a super thin bowl. It's not a thin bowl at all, but it's not super thick either. I'd say it's maybe about a quarter to a half inch thick, something like that. It's not a really thin walled bowl. Maybe about a quarter inch thick. But again, oak is a nice dense wood, so. And what I do is all those shavings, I save them because when I bring the bowl home, I pack the bowl in a paper bag with those shavings for a while, and it helps stabilize the humidity. Because when you dry a bowl doesn't technically dry. You want it to stabilize with your environment, and you don't want it to dry or stabilize too quickly or too slowly. So having it in that in those shavings, in its own shavings, really provides a nice environment for it to stabilize in. And I'm only going backwards with the bowl gouge a little bit because I'm trying to get a flat bottom on the inside of the bowl here. And at one point I do, right here I go for the scraper to try to even out the tool marks on the bottom of the bowl and a little bit on the sides. I'm not really trying to take way too much more material at this point because right now I'm happy with how thick the walls are and how thick the bottom of the bowl is. Right now I'm just trying to smooth everything out. Here I'm going with the scraper again. I'm just trying to make some fine cuts. You can see how small those flecks are there coming off the piece. Really thin. And now it's time for sanding. I should have sanded the bottom of this before I flipped it around, but that's okay because I have enough room to. I know I have enough room to sand the outside of it right now. I should have done it before, but that's okay. For this piece, I'm happy with what I have. So I'm starting off with I believe an 80 grit, going to 120, 240, and then 400. And this lathe does not have a reverse feature on it. I'm starting to learn a little bit more about the benefits of having a reverse feature on a lathe because your cuts are all going in one direction and the fibers are all going to be resting in one direction. But when you sand, it's good to sand in reverse. A lot of people like sanding in reverse because then you're going against how you cut it. And then I take the sanding pads off, and then because the sanding pads are great, but this is a smaller bowl, and the interior curve of it is a little sharper than my sanding pad is able to bend. And you see, I stopped there to sand the center. I actually stopped the lathe. That's another trick that I learned from Kent Weekly. He stops his lathe to sand the center because the lathe is, if you have the lathe spinning, your sander spinning, you're gonna end up with. He says you're gonna end up with like a moat in the center there. You're gonna end up with a lot of repetitive sanding in the center. So I stop it to sand the very center of it like that. And I'm getting the back of the bowl. Or I should say the bottom of the bowl. I've been very happy with how this piece has been coming along. Like I said, the first time doing live, as you can see at the top there, some of the bark didn't quite make it into the final piece, but that's okay. It still looks beautiful. And the part that I don't show is when I'm done with the sanding, I actually take this off the lathe and I bring it over to a belt sander in another part of the wood shop, and I use that to take down the tenon. I do keep part of the shoulder on there, but I do remove the tenon using a belt sander. Trying to sand the top there a little bit. We have now time for the air compressor again to get some of that dust off. Now remember, at this point, you should be having your dust mask on. I've been wearing my face mask, my face shield and my dust mask since the beginning of this turn. All right, everyone, there we have it. My first live edge hardwood bowl. And here's the finished piece. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. See, I took that tenon off with the belt sander, but I kept the shoulder so it sits nice and flat. After about a day or so, I did coat it with linseed oil. It gave it just a slight golden hint of color to it, but I hope the camera picks that up. Look at that grain. That grain is absolutely fantastic. It looks even better in person because the camera is not really doing a great job picking it all up, but that looks absolutely fantastic. The wood is lighter there. I did hit this whole thing with linseed oil, but the wood is just naturally lighter here. So I made absolutely sure that I coated all of it evenly with linseed oil. It's just a little tricky to get the top. For the top, you might want to use a brush for it. You can't use a rag for that because, too many nooks and crannies in there. But live edge just looks absolutely fantastic. And this ended up, like I said, being a roughly 6-inch wide bowl, about a 1/4 inch thick walls. And it's something else. Again, this was a piece I picked up for free, and then brought it to the shop, did all the prep work, cut it to shape, used my chainsaw first to cut the shape down, then roughed it out on my bandsaw, and then finished rounding it on the lathe at the Fab Lab. But it's amazing we can get out of something that someone else is just trying to get rid of. So unless you're buying an exotic piece of wood that you can't find anywhere else, it is great to try to scour like the Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp or eBay, or just ask around. It's summertime now. People are felling trees all over the place. Just the other morning, I woke up and to the sound of a chainsaw down the street, and it turns out a neighbor of mine was cutting down a pine tree that was in her front yard. She had a couple of guys helping her cut down a pine tree, and I just went over and said, "Hey, you guys doing anything with this? You need any help?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, we're good, but they were going to use it, but if feel free to take a couple pieces if you need it." So I did. So, and I'll be using that in future projects. And anyway, don't forget, if you're new to the channel, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out. Visit goppatree.com for some more videos and projects and pieces for sale. And happy turning. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching.